Methods of Medieval Soldiers Training. Part 1. First Sword. You never forget that day when your father gave the commander a slight nod and his hand left your shoulder. At 12, you walked through the barracks gates for the first time. The wind carried the smell of sweat, leather, and dirt, the smell of a whole other world. From that day on, you were no longer a farm boy. You were a recruit. The barracks are a patch of dirt with stakes and high wooden fences. Every morning, a bugle wakes you up before the sun has even risen. The shouts of instructors, the clanging of weapons, and chants quickly become your daily soundtrack. The initial training was simple, but brutal. You learn to stand up straight, hold your head high, and not fidget. The slightest mistake, a slouched shoulder, a turned head, an out-of-sync breathing pattern, could result in a penalty for the entire line. As the team was forced to run around the field in the rain, you learned that discipline was more than mere obedience. It was survival. The first weapon you ever touched wasn't a sword, but a heavy piece of wood. They called it a practice sword, but it was nothing more than a rough log, heavy, clumsy, and it left blisters all over your hands. The instructor taught you how to stand, how to step forward, how to hold your right hand in the right place. A sword isn't for swinging, it's for controlling. He'd yell when another student knocked your sword away. That lesson left your shoulders sore for 3 days. You also learned to endure pain. After your first practice session, your thigh is torn open by a swing of a stick. Blood stains your pants, but no one lets you rest. If you go down from a small wound like this, you'll never survive the battlefield, the instructor says. You grit your teeth and keep going. For the first time, you feel like you're becoming stronger. The food in the barracks is not great, but it is enough to survive. You eat hard bread and watery soup, and drink cold water from the well. At night, you and the other recruits huddle together in the hut, your back aching, but sleep comes sooner than you think. Your dream that night is not of going home, but of one day wearing armor, holding a real sword, and standing among the ranks of warriors. The days that followed were even more brutal. You were assigned to clean weapons, clean stables, and pick up rocks from the training grounds. This was not punishment, but part of the training. In war, anything could be your responsibility. A week later, you learned to march in unison, shouting orders. Everyone must match their footfalls, their arms, their breathing. When the ranks are unified, the sound of footsteps echoes like the beat of a war drum. You begin to understand that an army is not a collection of individuals, but a unified body, and you are a part of it. Then one day the instructor brought out round wooden shields. You had to hold them in your left hand, while your right hand held a sword for practice. You learned to block, dodge, counterattack. During sparring sessions, you often got knocked down, face first, but each time you got up faster. The first weekend evening, you are allowed to sit around the fire. The old soldiers tell stories of battles, long marches, and those who never returned. A veteran sitting next to you, his finger missing 2 knuckles, smiles and says, "The sword takes not only the blood of the enemy, it takes your youth." You look at your hands, still the hands of a boy, but inside, you know you are changing. On the 15th day, you are tested. A small competition where recruits fight one-on-one in front of a coach. You step into the ring, facing a man a head taller than you. Your hand shakes slightly, but when the whistle blows, you charge in. You don't win, but you don't run away. And that's enough to get the coach to nod. That night, you are given a real sword, worn, old, but steel. It feels cold in your hand, but the moonlight reflecting off the blade makes your heart beat faster. You have passed the first stage, and the path ahead, though more difficult, begins to open up beneath your feet. Part 2. Survival Skills. After the first weeks of sweat and dust in the training grounds, You enter the next phase of your training, the test that takes place outside the barracks. Early one morning, while the forest is still misty, you and the other recruits are called out to march. No one tells you where you're going, only that you're to carry your sword, shield, pack, and 3 days' worth of food. You learn to walk across waterlogged fields without getting your feet in the mud, to listen to the sounds of the forest, to distinguish between human footsteps and the sounds of wild animals. The instructors no longer shout, as they do in the training ground. Here, silence is the order, and instructions are whispered like wind through leaves. The first tent you set up collapses in a night wind. The ropes aren't tight enough. The stakes are crooked. You and your comrades sleep in the slanted tent, the cold seeping through the cracks. The next morning, the instructor just passes by and whispers, "In war, you'll die for mistakes like that." You learn to tie ropes with different knots: the stork knot, the death knot, the slip hitch. The rawhide ropes become vital tools for survival, not only for pitching tents, but also for bandaging, trapping animals, and pulling the wounded out of mud. In the afternoons, you learn to start a fire using crushed stones and dry tinder. Fire is not just for warmth, but for light, for hope, for keeping spirits up in the cold forest nights. As your supplies dwindle, you begin to learn how to forage in the wild. With guidance, you learn which leaves are edible, which roots can be roasted, which wild fruits are poisonous, and which are not. One time, a fellow member of your group eats a strange fruit, and the group has to carry him back while he vomits. It's a bitter lesson, but more effective than any warning. Hunting is a big part of your training. You're given a small bow with 5 arrows. No one expects you to hit the target, but you have to learn to stalk quietly, hold your breath, and be patient. One time, you wait almost an hour, only to see a rabbit turn and walk away. You don't hit anything, but you feel like you understand nature a little better, and the tenacity of a warrior. Water was a challenge. There were no streams everywhere, and you learned to find water from leaves, from roots, from moist soil. You also learned to filter water with sand, charcoal, and coarse cloth, although the resulting water still tasted musty and fishy. You coughed and coughed while drinking, but it was better than being thirsty in the middle of the forest. The nights in the forest were longer than any you had ever experienced. There were no lights, no lullabies, no roosters in the morning, only the sounds of insects, owls, and the occasional distant howl of a wolf or something more sinister. You lay curled in your cloak, your sword close to you, your hand still clutching the hilt of the small knife hidden in your belt. One night, while the camp is sleeping, there's a noise near the bushes. You and the other 2 jump up, eyes widening in the darkness. It is not an enemy, but a stray deer. But the instructor is standing behind you, unnoticed. He only says one sentence: "Always be ready." The night is unforgiving. On the morning of the 4th day, when the group returned to camp, you were no longer the clean-cut boys you had been when you left. Your clothes were torn, your faces were dirty, and you smelled of smoke, mud, and sweat. But each step was steadier. You had learned how to pitch a tent, make a fire, find water, trap animals, bandage wounds, and stay alive in the harsh outdoors. Survival skills aren't as glorious as taking up a sword in battle, but you understand. No one can fight if they don't make it to the battlefield alive. And a warrior doesn't just wield a sword, he also nurtures life. You quietly polish your old steel sword, let a long breath, and know you're one step closer to becoming a true soldier. Part 3. Weapons and Armaments. As the camp enters its new training season, the atmosphere is different. Gone are the groans of sore muscles and blistered hands from wielding wooden swords. Now you and your teammates are ready to move on to the more important part: getting acquainted with the full range of weapons a medieval warrior could use on the battlefield. On the first morning of the new week, The armory opens before you. Inside are real weapons, no more wooden training kits. Racks of long swords, battle axes, spears, crossbows, longbows, iron maces all glisten in the early morning sunlight. You feel like a child entering a treasure trove. But you also realize that every item here can take your life if used incorrectly. You are assigned to a melee weapons training group. In your early days, you learn to hold a long sword with two hands, using the weight of the steel to create momentum instead of straining. Don't fight the weapon, fight with the weapon, the instructor stresses. If you fight it, it will fight you. You try the battle axe, a brutal but powerful weapon. Your arm gets tired after just a few swings, but some of your friends are better suited to the axe, beaming as they slice through a thick log in just 3 swings. You, on the other hand, go back to the sword and shield. Balance, speed, and technique suit your frame better than the brutal weight. A group of crossbowmen are training not far from you. You see them practicing for hours just to pull the bowstring without shaking their hands. Their instructor, a blind old soldier, constantly stresses stillness and breath control. Your eyes don't need to be as sharp as your mind. The arrow doesn't follow the muscle, it follows the will, he says. In the afternoon, you learn about different types of spears. Long spears for fighting cavalry, short spears for close quarters thrusting. You learn how to hold your spear steady when an enemy charges, how to keep your hands from shaking when facing a galloping horse. This is simulated with a dummy hanging from a wooden frame, charged by a rope. You tremble when it first hits your shield. It feels like real pressure. But gradually, you become more stable. One morning, the instructor asks each of you to choose a primary weapon, the one you'll stick with from now on. You hesitate. The sword has been your companion since day one, but the agility of the short sword and shield also appeals to you. In the end, you choose the long sword and round shield, a classic but effective combination. This decision led to more intensive training. You learned how to keep your distance, how to shield your weak spots while still being flexible enough to counterattack. You practiced hundreds of slashes, jabs, and parries every day until your shoulders and wrists ached and went numb. On the 10th day, you enter the free arms round. Each of you will fight a duel with your chosen weapon, with no script, no instructions. You face a man with a short sword and a mace. He is fast, but you keep your distance. Each time he lunges, you take a half step back, block with your shield, and then stab back with your sword. The duel lasts longer than expected, but you win with a surprise blow to your opponent's flank. Victory does not make you arrogant, but makes you understand every movement, every breath in battle more deeply. You feel a true connection with your sword and shield. They are no longer objects outside of you, but extensions of yourself. You also learn how to maintain your weapons. Sharpen the blade, oil it, wrap the handle. A dull blade is a death sentence in battle. A bent bow will send an arrow flying astray. You understand that weapons require more than just strength to wield. They also require care, like a living creature. At the end of the course, your group takes a final test. Multi-person, multi-weapon coordination. You stand next to the spearman, with the archer behind you. When the signal is given, your group moves in formation. You shield the loader, stand shoulder to shoulder with the axeman, and strike when the opportunity arises. At the end of the training session, the instructor approaches you, quietly placing his hand on your shoulder. Sword and shield are your friends, he says. But what will keep you alive is your mind and heart. You nod, looking at the sword in your hand, and know you have found a weapon not just for the body, but for the soul of the warrior. Part 4, Drills and Formations. The atmosphere in the barracks has changed dramatically. There's no more shouting about correcting posture or correcting a mistake. Now every command is aimed at coordination. You and your teammates are no longer individuals, but bricks in a wall, cogs in a machine. And the first thing you have to learn is how to stand properly, next to each other. Formation is your life, the instructor said, voice low, but sharp as a sword. If you fall out of formation, the enemy doesn't need to be good. They just need to stab into the gap you leave. You stand shoulder to shoulder with 5 others, shields up, swords held low. Every step forward, every shield lift, is accompanied by the steady drumbeats of your commander. The first steps are laborious. Some move too slowly, others too quickly, distorting the formation like a broken fence. But after a few days of practicing from dawn to dusk, everyone begins to fit together like gears. You learn to turn your formation on command. Phalanx turn left, and you turn, keeping your shield at the right angle, following your teammates without stepping on anyone's toes. Then form a line. Make a defensive position. Each command is a reflex that must be formed in your bones. You're assigned to basic assault formation. 2 rows of shields in front, 2 rows of spears behind. It feels like standing in the middle of a giant porcupine, with spears sticking out like spikes. Your first practice with real spears leaves your hands numb from holding the position for half an hour. You can't see your opponent, just the back of the person in front of you and the tip of your own spear. But you understand, combat isn't always face-to-face. Each formation has a role. There are defensive squads, big shields, slow-moving. There are lighter squads, faster weapons, specialized for breaking through. You were put in the assault squad one day, carrying a short sword and having to run through gaps in the enemy formation. Each charge was a gamble. You almost got hit in the shoulder if you didn't dodge. Back in the main formation, you breathed a sigh of relief. At least there, you had teammates on either side, and a shield to rely on. One cold, rainy afternoon, you are having your first mock battle. The forest outside the camp is divided into 2 zones, one for the invading forces and the other for the defending forces. You are part of the defending team, assigned to guard a hillside. It is wet, the ground is slippery, and the drums of command sound through the mist like thunder. The enemy comes from the foot of the hill, wave after wave. You and your comrades hold formation as you've practiced. As they close in, the command "shield up" rings out. You put all your strength into your left arm, feeling the first impact of the enemy's weapon reverberate on your bones. Then counterattack. And you take a half step, thrust, pull back. It's all rhythmic. Push, thrust, retreat, hold formation. There comes a moment when the formation breaks and a gap appears. The enemy rushes in, but you see the person on your right take a step back to cover, and you quickly move to fill the gap. No one needs to give you a command. That's when you understand. Formation isn't just about people moving in sync. It's about trusting that everyone on your team will have your back, whether they see you or not. The night after the mock battle, you sit around the campfire with the men who stood beside you in the formation. No one says much, just shares the hard bread and jerky. But the look in your eyes is one of unspoken understanding. You are no longer an individual. You are part of a team, a force. In the days that follow, you are taught hand signals, swinging horizontally to disperse, clenching your fist to stop, pointing your index finger forward to attack. The instructor says that when the drums cannot be heard far, when the commander falls, signals are the last word on the battlefield. You practice so much that you can see your hand signals in your dreams. At the end of your training, you and your teammates are tasked with a simulated operation. Take a forest from the enemy and hold it until reinforcements arrive. The battle lasts 3 hours, with retreats, ambushes, and counterattacks. You don't remember all the details, but you remember running through the trees, hearing the clanking of shields, seeing teammates fall, and others quickly filling in. When it was all over, the commander looked at you and your comrades, nodding for the first time since the training began. "You are no longer peasants with swords," he said. "You are a unit. You tighten your grip on your sword, and for the first time, not out of fear, but out of pride." Part 5. Discipline and Punishment. You begin to realize that combat techniques and teamwork are only part of military life. There's one thing that holds this giant machine together, keeping it from falling into chaos: discipline. And you realize that in this barracks, rules are not advice, they are orders. Any infraction, no matter how small, is punished without mercy. One morning, a fellow soldier arrived 15 minutes late, having overslept. He thought he could slip into the ranks and join the march, but the drill instructor had seen him. "Put down your shield," he ordered. The young soldier stepped into the middle of the training ground, in full view. He was forced to hold his spear at arm's length for an hour. Each time his arm dropped, a club to his calf reminded him of his balance. You stand there, sweat dripping down your spine. He is your tent mate. You shared your water with him on a hot day. But at this hour, there is no room for sentiment. If everyone is late, the formation will collapse. You start to pay more attention to each rule. No eating until ordered. No talking while moving. No turning back if you hear shouting behind you. People violate these seemingly absurd rules, and they are punished. Some are made to dig holes for 3 days straight. Some are tied up in the middle of the yard in the midday sun. Some are beaten so hard on the palms of their hands that they can't hold a shield for a week. Once, you witnessed the most severe punishment. A young soldier got into a fight with his comrades at night. Ego, pride, and bootleg liquor were 3 things that could kill more easily than swords. When he was caught, he was stripped of his armor, tied up, and hung outside the camp gate for all to see. No one pitied him, because if the small flame of disobedience was allowed to smolder, the moment it flared up, the entire formation would be burned to the ground. But discipline is more than whips and punishments. It is preparation, a habit hardened to unconsciousness. You learn to pack your things in exactly the same cloth bag. You learn to wake up to the sound of a trumpet in 3 breaths. You learn to clean your weapons every night. Check your armor belt every morning. Once you forget to oil your sword, and the next morning you see the first rust on the edge of the steel. You tell no one, but punish yourself by cleaning the weapons of the entire group that night. Shame is stronger than any beating. One rainy night, the entire camp was roused by a false signal of an enemy attack. Everyone was out on the training ground within 5 minutes, but one of your teammates, exhausted, was still wearing his boots when the instructor caught him. "If this is real, you're dead," he said, and he was punished by standing naked in the rain all night. You watched him, shivering but not complaining, and knew that the next morning he would never miss a beat again. Gradually, you no longer feel constrained by rules. They become part of your DNA. When you step forward with your left foot, you know the person next to you will step forward with their left foot. When you draw your sword, you know no one will run. And you also understand that out there, on the actual battlefield, it is this uniformity that will keep you alive. Those who have been punished the most severely are often the most disciplined afterward. They do not bear grudges, but rather carry their wounds as souvenirs. Once you ask one of them, "Don't you resent me?" He just smiled. "No one can hurt me more than my own mistakes." At the end of the discipline training, there is a special test. The team is released into the woods, each in a different direction, with a false map and unclear instructions. The goal is not to find a way out, but to follow the real signal in a sea of false signals, to stay on track despite the chaos. You lose your way amid the howls, the drums, the false calls. But you close your eyes and remember what the instructor once said. Discipline is the compass in your heart. When all the noise around you becomes chaos, it will show you where your center is. You find your team after half a day of wandering. The leader does not praise you. He simply asks, "Did anyone do what they said they would do?" The team is silent. For the first time, no one has broken any orders. That evening, the coach invited the team to sit around the fire and poured each of them a cup of herbal tea. There was no alcohol, but for the first time, everyone felt rewarded. He said, "A warrior may be weak, but a unit cannot be weak, and a unit is only strong if each man knows that his actions affect all. From now on, you are not just swordsmen. You are disciplinarians of the unit. Bring this into battle, and you will go home." You look up at the night sky, starry cold, but peaceful. You don't know when you'll be called to battle, but you know you'll never forget the rules that have been etched into your mind through sweat, blood, and silence as you watch your friends get punished. Because it's discipline that keeps you alive to tell the tale. Part 6. Practice with real weapons. You thought you knew how to use weapons. That hours of swinging wooden swords, building heavy shields, and stabbing dummies with spears made you a warrior. But then one day, your instructor walked into the training yard with a chest of real weapons, shining steel swords, needle-sharp spears, heavy axes, and loaded bows. "The toy is finished," he said, his voice dry. "Now you will know what the real sword says when it touches bone." You pick up the first sword in your life with a blade this sharp. The weight is different, heavier than a wooden sword, but evenly distributed. The cold metal feels like it's being sent through your gauntlet. You swing it and feel the wind cut across your face. It's unforgiving. One wrong swing and you'll bleed. The training began with the old routine: positions, crosscuts, vertical slashes, thrusts. But this time, the clanging of swords was like the ringing of bells. Someone almost cut his friend's hand. Someone cut his cheek when he couldn't block it in time. Blood began to flow, and no one was allowed to retreat. You remember your first real sword duel. Your opponent was a short, fast man with a short axe. You tried to block the first blow with your shield, but he twisted his wrist and swung behind you. You backed away, tripping over rocks, almost falling. Your sword was raised to block out of instinct, not technique. When the duel was over, you were out of breath, your shoulder aching from a blow to your armor. But the instructor just nodded. "Good. You're scared. Now you're starting to learn." You learn to hold the blade not just to cut, but to block. How to listen to the sound of metal on metal and predict the path of the next blow. You learn that sometimes not fighting back is the only way to survive. You learn that weapons are not about power. They are about choice, to cut or to hold back. Then there's the long spear. It looks simple, but you soon realize it's a weapon that requires almost mathematical precision. One misplaced thrust, and the spearhead is pushed aside, leaving you open to counterattack. You train all week to hit a target smaller than the palm of your hand. And every time you miss, you're forced to stand still and take a light smack from your instructor. So you'll remember what the enemy does when you're wrong. A bow and arrow is different. You think it's just pull, aim, and release. But when your hand shakes from fatigue, when the wind changes direction, when the target moves, you realize that hitting an enemy's heart from a distance requires something few people have: patience. You learn to feel the wind with your face, to judge distance with your footsteps, and to hold your breath just enough to keep your hand from shaking. Night shooting is a real challenge. With no light, you have to rely on sound and feel. Some people miss 5 arrows. Some people break their bowstring. But some people, for the first time, hit a dummy 20 feet away in the dark. You are not that person, but you know. You will practice until you succeed. The instructor also taught lower weapons, daggers, pebbles, even shovels. When you run out of spears, lose your sword, and break your bow, he said, you will find the shovel a gift from heaven. You practice stabbing with short knives, blocking with your arms, and throwing rocks at moving targets. A true warrior does not rely on any weapon. He turns everything into a weapon. Sometimes you have to maintain your own weapons. Learn how to sharpen a sword with a stone, oil it, and replace a bowstring when it's loose. You sit by the campfire, your hands covered in oil and the smell of iron, but you feel at peace, because your weapon is your second life, and only by understanding it inside and out will you know how to survive. The last week, the camp held a final mock battle. Each person chose the weapon they were most comfortable with, and they fought in pairs. You chose the long sword, not because you were the best with it, but because you felt a bond. In 3 rounds, you won 2 and lost 1. But you were unhurt, and you didn't make a single technical mistake. After the final game, the coach said something you will never forget. Now, the weapon is no longer a tool. It is part of you. And when you go into battle, it will be your voice, saying for you, I came not to die, but to live. You look at the sword in your hand, no longer cold, for your blood, sweat, and determination have warmed it. And you know, you are halfway to becoming a warrior. Part 7, Collective Tactics and Formation. It has been weeks since you set foot in the barracks. You are no longer ignorant of weapons, discipline, or physical strength, but it is only when you enter the tactical training phase that you understand. A lone warrior is nothing but a blade of grass in a storm. An organized formation is an impenetrable wall. Fighting is not about swinging swords, the instructor said on the first day. It is about the coordination of hundreds of people, like the gears of a machine. If one gear slips, the whole machine breaks. The first lesson is a line formation. You and 12 others stand shoulder to shoulder, each holding a shield and a sword. One false step, and the shield wall will shatter. You practice stepping in time, pausing in time, raising your shields at the same time, roaring in time. The instructor taps a long stick on any shield. If one shakes more than the others, the person holding it is sent to do push-ups. You soon learn to hold your shield as if it were your life. Next up is the wedge formation. This is the offensive formation, pointed like a spear. You're on the left flank, the one most vulnerable to the enemy, but also the one who keeps the team on the pivot. The coach calls this the reliable guy's spot. You feel a quiet sense of pride, even though your legs are burning from running the formation nonstop. Then there's the cube formation, which is great for defense, especially when surrounded. Everyone in a corner, facing outward, shields held high, spears thrust low. You stand in that formation on the first day of testing, and within minutes, your shirt is soaked with sweat, not because of fear, but because you know that if this is real, any opening is a door to death. You learn to substitute in the middle of a match. When one is injured or exhausted, you stand back, ready to take his place with a shout and a leap. If you are slow, the whole team falls back. If you are fast, no one will know the change has been made. You find that the efficiency is greater than any slash. During the 3rd week of tactical training, you and your teammates enter a simulated battle. The camp is divided into 2 camps, one defending, the other attacking. You are chosen to be on the attacking side, under the command of a veteran soldier. Don't think I'll give in, he says coldly. There is no such thing as a student on the battlefield. You and your teammates hide behind a fake forest of fabric and wood. When the signal goes off, your team attacks in a wedge formation, with you at the spearhead this time. Running, screaming, charging, clashing. You shove your shield into the enemy's belly, dodge a slash, and jab your spear into the gap, all in seconds. No one dies, but the sweat, the bruises, and the groans are real. After the game, the coach said nothing. He just handed you and the rest of the team a cold water bottle. That's the reward for surviving. He laughed. Despite the tension, there are times when you find it funny to realize that everything is like a dance. Step left, turn right, lift up, lower down. Except if you make a wrong step, you don't get stomped on. You get stabbed in the gut. One of the final lessons is combat communication. You can't always shout. You learn to use your hands to signal, from fall back to change formation, from spread out to encircle. You practice each of these movements with your teammates under the moonlight until you can see a raised finger and know what to do. The weekend practice is a test. 2 real teams face off, with referees and injury limits. But there's no mercy. You've been given the role of left-wing commander, a responsibility as heavy as it is dangerous. You remember every command, every signal, every lesson you've learned over the past weeks. When the game is over, you get hit in the ribs and fall into the mud, bruised and bruised. But your team won. The coach comes over and doesn't say anything but praise. Your team listened to each other. You did something you never could have done alone. That evening, you sit by the fire with your comrades. No one says much. Each of you holds a bowl of cold soup, eating and thinking. No one calls each other newbie or clumsy anymore. You don't have any close friends, but you don't need them, because now you are part of a collective, a team that lives, fights, and if necessary, dies together. You look around. Someone is sleeping from exhaustion. Someone is polishing his shield. Someone is mending his bowstring. And you know, it is not weapons, not strength, but cooperation that wins. And that very night, you no longer feel like a student. You feel like you are part of a great machine, and you have learned to operate it without a single misalignment. Part 8. Real battle simulation. You think you've seen it all. The swords, the formations, the discipline. But then the instructor announces something different. Next week, we're going to reenact a real battle, he says. Not to win, but to learn what war is all about. You and nearly 100 other soldiers are split into 2 columns. No more small formations or drills. This is a full-scale simulated battlefield. Open grasslands, earthen ramparts, trenches, makeshift wooden watchtowers, mock canvas forts, and bamboo fences. The team sleeps outdoors, takes turns keeping watch, and feeds itself as if it were on the march. The night before the battle, you can't sleep. Not because you're scared, but because you're excited. The instructor walks over to where you're sharpening your spear, stops, and sits down. He looks into the fire. Every man who goes into battle for the first time can't sleep, he said softly. Not because he's afraid of dying, but because he doesn't know who he's going to kill. You don't reply. Just squeeze his hand tighter. The next morning, you don leather armor and helmets, and carry water skins, ropes, short knives, and dry rations. No one carries sharp weapons. All are wooden or blunt, but the impact and impact are real. Across the line are the people you've trained with for weeks, but now they're enemies. The battle begins with a flare, a loud bang that makes you jump. You lie flat on the ground, listening to the shouts rise like waves. Then you stand up and charge forward with your squad, your feet sinking into the soft mud, your eyes never leaving the enemy's position. Before you can engage, a comrade next to you takes a blow to the shoulder with the stick and falls. Out of the fight, the overseer shouts, and he retreats to the rear. You continue forward, bumping your shoulder against your comrade, and your spear blade hits the enemy's shield. The impact is deafening, and the force of the blow sends a jolt through your arm. You don't remember the next few minutes. Sometimes you swung your sword. Sometimes you retreated. Sometimes you screamed without hearing your own voice. You remember one moment most clearly. A man across from you fell, unable to get up. His eyes stared at you, panicked. You knelt down and pulled him out of the crowd, then turned back to the front line, as if nothing had happened. The instructor then just nodded. Killing is easy. Saving is hard. The battle comes to a halt in the evening. Each side sets up camp and takes turns keeping watch at night. You and your comrades build trenches, erect wooden fences, and set traps. A sudden rainstorm turns the ground muddy, but no one stops. Your stomachs are hungry, your hands are cold, your feet are sore, but you no longer think of yourself, only of defending your line of defense. The next morning, the battle resumes. The enemy attacks from the woods, which you thought were deserted. You are knocked out of position and run back to the supply station. But instead of resting, you ask to be sent back to the front. This is when you learn who you are. The instructor says when he sees you return. The final counterattack plays out like a dream. You can barely feel your limbs, but you know exactly when to step forward, when to duck, when to step between the two enemies and block their path with your body. It's as if you're no longer in control of your body. Your warrior instincts are speaking for you. When the final fireworks blast ends, you collapse to the grass. No one laughs. No one celebrates. Just gasps, groans of pain, the crunch of the dirt beneath your shoes. The coach walks through each of you, puts his hand on your shoulder, looks you in the eye. When it's your turn, he doesn't say anything, just gives you a pat. But you know he sees something different about you. There was no feast that night, just soup and a fire. But you felt strangely warm. You had thought war was glorious. Now you understood. It was the ultimate test of mind and body. And as you lie down in your wet cloak, your back resting on your chipped shield, your eyes looking up at the starry sky, you think not of victory, not of the enemy, but of one thing. You have survived a battle without losing yourself. And so you know, when the real war comes, you will no longer be a novice, but a warrior who has crossed the first threshold of fire and iron. Part 9. Training the Spirit and Will. After the real battle simulation, you understand that weapons, formations, and tactics are all important. But what makes the difference is the steely spirit and unyielding will. The instructor starts teaching you that with equally harsh exercises. The first day is a solitary exercise. You are taken out of camp, deep in the woods, with no map, no compass, just a sword and a small bag of food. The task: find your way back to camp within 3 days. You must rely on your observation skills, your memory, and your perseverance. You encounter insects, wild animals, and bitterly cold nights. There are times when you want to give up, but you remember what the instructor said. Warriors don't run from storms. They learn to survive in them. Then there are the physical endurance exercises. Carrying heavy sandbags for long distances, running in the rain, soaking in cold water, holding the same position for hours. Every time you want to give up, trainer reminds you, pain is just a test of will. Through it we grow. You learn not only to endure, but also to inspire your teammates. When one of your teammates falls, you are not allowed to abandon them. You are to encourage them, help them, and if necessary, pull them up on your shoulders. You learn to stay calm in the midst of chaos, to keep faith in others when things are at their darkest. One night, during a camp practice, a storm suddenly arises. The rain pours down, the wind howls like demons. Tents flap, fires burn fiercely. In the chaos, you and a small group must hold your ground, protect your food and weapons. You shout, signal your teammates, help put out the tents, put out the small fires, keep everyone safe. It is then that you realize for the first time, strong will can turn ordinary people into invincible warriors. The instructor also frequently tells stories of warriors of old who overcame adversity with the steely spirit. It wasn't because they had better weapons or more numbers. It was because they had tenacity, faith, and a thirst for life. He says, these stories not only keep you up at night, but also burn a sacred fire in your heart. Finally, you learn the art of staying calm under pressure through exercises to deal with loud noises, bright lights, and unexpected situations. Every time your heart races, your hands shake, you learn to take a deep breath, focus on your breathing, and regain control. Because when your mind is calm, you can see more clearly, react faster, and make better decisions. You come to realize that a warrior is not just someone who is good with a sword, but someone who has a mind of steel, a will that is strong no matter how difficult things are. And it is that will that will help you stand firm when everything falls apart around you. You are no longer a beginner. You have become a warrior in your soul, ready to face any challenge ahead. Part 10. Preparing for battle and the warrior's mindset. The final day of training has arrived. You are no longer the young, bewildered soldier you were when you first entered the barracks. Now, you stand tall, eyes fixed on the horizon, your hand holding a shiny sword, your heart filled with determination. Early in the morning, the entire camp gathers in the main square. The instructor, the one who has led you through each lesson, steps up to the podium. His voice booms, "Warriors, tomorrow you will enter the real battle. No one promises victory, but I promise you will be ready." You look around and see the eyes of your teammates, people who were once your friends, now your comrades in arms. Each one has scars, traces of the hard training days, but within them is strength, an inseparable connection. In the afternoon, you and your squad practice the formations, signals, and tactics you have learned for the last time. The commands become quick and precise, each movement coordinated smoothly, like a play that has been performed many times. As dusk falls, you are assigned to patrol the camp's border. Tonight, you do not sleep. You sit by the campfire, watching the flames dance, thinking about the journey you have traveled. From a clumsy soldier, you have become a true warrior, not only knowing how to use a sword, but also knowing how to use courage, will, and wisdom. You know the battle ahead won't be easy. Not just a battle of strength, but also a battle of mind and heart. But you're ready to face danger, uncertainty, and yourself. Before leaving camp, you take a few minutes to look over your equipment, checking every little detail. Your sword is sharpened, your shield reinforced, and your helmet is rusty but still sturdy. Everything is ready, just like you. You say to yourself, "Today, I am not just a student of history. I am a part of that history." And as you step into the darkness of the night, you carry with you an unshakable faith. That is the training, the discipline, and the spirit that made you the warrior you are, and it is that which will carry you through every challenge ahead. The medieval soldier training journey you have just experienced is not only a story about training weapons or tactics, but also a testament to the perseverance, discipline, and steel spirit of ancient warriors. From the first days of clumsiness with wooden swords, to learning how to move in formation, then entering into intense battle simulations, and finally training in a resilient spirit, all have created a vivid picture of meticulous and comprehensive preparation for war. You have seen that it is not individual skill that determines victory, but teamwork, endurance, and indomitable spirit that are true strength. Through each challenge, you not only mature physically, but also deepen your soul, becoming a warrior not only with swordsmanship, but also with will and loyalty. Ultimately, your story is a reminder of the value of preparation and teamwork in any challenge life throws at you. While the iron sword and shield are no longer there, the lessons of perseverance, courage, and determination are still relevant. Thank you for joining the History of Bedtime on your journey to becoming a medieval warrior. We hope this story has given you not only knowledge, but also inspiration about the power within each of us. the power of will and courage. See you in the next historical stories, where the past blends with the present to light up the future.